Economic Partnership Agreement, by the records, is a scheme to create a free trade area between the European Union and the African, Caribbean and Pacific group of states. It is a response to continuing criticism that the non-reciprocal and discriminating preferential trade agreement offered by the European Union are incompatible with World Trade Organization's rules. After 10 years of talks, West Africa and the European Union concluded on February 2014 the negotiations for an Economic Partnership Agreement, EPA. The deal is a major agreement from trade and development point of view. By the records, it confirms the privileged partnership between the two regions. In all this, Nigeria is yet to sign the agreement. Nigeria says it is considering the mismatch of the two regions, that is, Europe and Ecowas, in terms of technology and manufacturing experience. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and associated trade unions concerns over the negative impact of the agreements on Nigeria's industrialization program. Despite this, Nigeria says it is working towards addressing our own side of the issues, and in this direction, she is impressing on the EU partners to address Nigeria's concerns to allow agreements that is mutually beneficial and can contribute to the prosperity of her citizens in the context of shared values and interest at promoting cordial bilateral trade relations.
In view of the current economic challenges plaguing the Nigerian economy, the federal government, through the Minister of State, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, says strategic steps are being taken by the federal government to initiate new economic policies that will revamp the economy. The government is also reviewing previous trade agreements and proposals of the past administration to forestall future reoccurrence of the current economic downturn. This economic policy direction of the government has necessitated the review of the Economic Partnership Agreement, EPA, between the European Union and the Ecowas community, which Nigeria is a major stakeholder.
The EPA is too critical to be concluded and signed in a hurry.
Though most of the countries under the ECOWAS umbrella have signed up for the EPA trade agreement, the Nigerian government says there is a need to reflect on the pros and cons of the agreement and engage due diligence before making a final decision.
In fact, the government has responsibility to protect its citizens, first and foremost. There has to be Nigeria before there's ECOWAS.
We believe that this would affect our industrialization. Most of the other ECOWAS countries do not indulge in as much manufacturing as Nigeria does.
The minister maintained that the federal government economic policy direction is geared towards domestic growth, especially in the area of industrialization, employment generation and modernization of the Nigerian economy.
Does this development in any way threaten trade relations between the EU and Nigeria? What is the way forward? That is a concern on diplomatic ties today. Ken Okoa is my guest. Ken Okoa is a lawyer, not just a lawyer, but a trade lawyer, and Nigeria's president for the National Association of Nigerian Traders. Mr. Ken Okoa, thanks for joining me on Diplomatic
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adele.
My name is Omini Odan. We'll be right back after this time out. You were involved in the negotiations. What really played out?
Well, to summarize the negotiations that took place, not in 10 years, but 12 good years, because the negotiations started from 2002. And of course, we can say that the negotiations is still on, because if we had concluded the negotiations, Nigeria would have signed by this morning. But what really played out was what I would call, and of course, government cannot say this. As an insider, I could see intrigues. As an insider in the negotiations, I could see pressure, undue pressure. As an insider, I could see one playing like a big brother, know it all, and then you must have to suppress, you must have to understand, you must have to kick in.
And who is this big brother?
And of course, we know that Europe is our colonial master. And it tried to make sure that everything was like master-servant relationship in the negotiations. But some of us who also, who also studied in Europe understood the gimmicks. And we felt, look, this is trade. This is going to be an agreement between two parties. And these two parties must lay all the plans, all the strategies, all actors, all actions, every interest, every need, and concerns on the table so that we see the cards to pick and who wants to leave. But that did not play out that way. And I can give you instances. Take, for instance, what is the tripod objective of the EPA? Just that matter alone. One is poverty reduction. The second is sustainable development. The third is regional integration. But if you look at the EPA, both during the negotiation process as well as the outcome, the eventual and probable outcome, you cannot fix an eye on any of these results tilting towards West Africa and essentially Nigeria.
So being somebody who is a party from Nigeria or from West Africa who was part of the negotiations, so what are you guys asking for? Because given the position of Nigeria, Nigeria says, look, we are ready to do this on grounds that you'll address our concerns. And you are a focal group in Nigeria, in the larger picture, West Africa, talking about Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. You are the president of Nigeria's National Association of Nigerian Traders. So what are those things you expect that should be done so that Nigeria can sign this EP? Because we understand that Nigeria and Gambia are the two countries in West Africa that said they will not sign until the proper things are done within the ambits of World Trade Organization's rules.
Thank you. Let me say this record very clearly and very plain. I came into the negotiations as a consultant. When the negotiations started in 2004 proper, because all the 2002 to 2004 was just, kind of preparations. And then they were looking for trade experts, trade lawyers that will go into the negotiation. And they couldn't get. And eventually they came to me and said, look, we want you to help us in the legal aspects of the negotiations as a trade lawyer. Of course, I came up and I began to bring up as a person, as an individual, not as a representative of Nigeria, not as a representative of West Africa, but as a consultant in the negotiations, brought in by Ecowas. And I looked at the trades and I said, the first thing I said was, can we please go into the negotiations with a proper view of our interests and our concerns, and therefore articulate a draft. Okay. You don't go into negotiations without a draft of what you want. And you allow the other party to now throw in a draft. If the other party throws in a draft, you will be running through that and following. You become a follower.
Okay.
And therefore our interests were not covered. Number two is that you don't go into negotiations without a trade policy. West Africa until today does not have a trade policy.
So how do we address that?
How do we address that? We address that by, first of all, getting a trade policy of ours, a harmonized trade policy that takes into cognizance the various components and the various countries in West Africa, and that was not done. Number two is that you look at the WTO rules. What do they specify? Look at, for instance, Article 24, where the European Union was, hinging on. Article 24 talks about, liberalization of trade. And it says it's substantially all trade. I'm not going into the technical details. Substantially all trade will be liberalized. And the EU hooked on that and said, look, you must liberalize all your trade, substantially all, up to about 90%. And we said, no, this is a subject of interpretation in the WTO.
Okay.
Even up to this moment, it is not clear what figure makes up that.
My concern is this.
Yes.
Now, it is clear that other West African countries except Nigeria and Gambia have not signed. Any prospects?
Yeah, but let's look at it from this angle. Look at those that have signed. Ghana signed and said, look, we are signing because of our national interest, not because of our regional interest. If you now juxtapose that, judge that with the objective of the EPA, which I told you before, regional integration, what does it tell you? Cote d'Ivoire signed and said because of our national interest. And then they have also moved along to ratify that at their parliament. That means they are all looking at their own national interest. why would Nigeria not look at her national interest? That's where we are at this point. Nigeria has looked at the agreement. All the studies that were conducted for these 10 years have spelled out that Nigeria's economy will be at risk.
So why is it that Gambia is tying with Nigeria?
And Gambia said, look, with what we have seen, we have conducted our own study. As small as we are, in terms of population, in terms of market share, we would be hot. However, if this big man over there, who is Nigeria, the highest population, the largest in terms of market share in West Africa, has, if it signs, we then would say, let's go. Because Nigeria is about almost 2/3 of the whole of West Africa. 350 million people, and you have almost 180 million domiciled here. And of course, you want to know that the EU wants Nigeria, not just all of the countries. In any case, all the other countries, 13 countries out of these 16, have what we call everything but arms, EBA. So, if they have EBA, which is a preference for them, it's as good as anything. But for us as a country, as a non-LDC in West Africa, we need to protect our economy. And that's exactly what we're saying there. The kind of market access that was negotiated by Ecowas, without taking into cognizance Nigeria's potentials, without taking into cognizance Nigeria's industrialization strategy and all of that, is killing. You can't say liberalize, open up your borders, liberalize the economy up to 75%, and you hold only 25%.
So let's come back home to Nigeria. Now, Nigeria, through Mr. President, addressed the EU and gave them a condition and said, we are ready to flow with whatever you are agreeing, but provided you address our concerns. Now, you are a core person. You said you are not just there because you're from Nigeria, you're there as a consultant from Ecowas. So what leg of negotiations are we looking at now?
Now, you see, there's a quagmire somewhere. Because in 2007, there should have been the deadline. The EPA ought to have, by 31st of December, EPA negotiations would have ended. January 1st of 2008 should have ushered in the EPA agreement. But again, Article 36, paragraph 4 of the Cotonou Agreement that brought in the EPA said, look, if any country, especially the non-LDCs, feel that they are not very comfortable with their economy in this agreement, there should be a review and alternatives should be sought by the Commission, which is the EU.
Has that
never happened.
Okay.
And we sought for these alternatives every time. Give us what we call GSP plus, that is Generalized System of Preferences plus, that will make Nigeria lose a bit less and gain a bit more.
Okay.
Because it is, win and lose and all of that. But that did not happen. Okay. Again, Article 37, paragraph 3.
We're going to the next leg of the,
yes.
of the program. The program again is Diplomatic Ties, and our focus today is on the EPA, the Economic Partnership Agreement between the Ecowas and European Union. Will it in any way threaten trade? Nigeria expressed concerns why it cannot sign that agreement until its concerns with regards to the focal group's benefits in Ecowas and indeed Nigeria are addressed. We'll continue after the program, after this time out. Stay with us. All right, before we went on break, we're on the leg of, you have explained why it has to be where it is. Now, who were actually the focal person who should benefit this? Let us say Nigeria first, before the larger picture ECOWAS. If the agreement, imagine
the private sector should be the beneficiary.
E.g., can we know
manufacturers, traders, and essentially the SMEs. However, all of these components, the private sector in Nigeria came together and reviewed the whole process, reviewed the outcomes of the negotiations, including the texts. In fact, as a lawyer, I ran through the text of the agreement that has been concluded. Okay. And I can tell you, I'm coming up with a book on the implications of every article, one by one.
So one very concern that is bothering everybody, if ECOWAS backs out, if Nigeria backs out from this EPA, does it threaten trade relations at all between Nigeria and ECOWAS, EU?
It's already threatened. The moment Ghana signed, and the moment Cote d'Ivoire signed and went into their parliament, it became law. Okay. And of course, you look at our law. Section 12 of our constitution, 1999 constitution, as amended, is saying that no agreement can come into force, no international agreement can come into force in Nigeria, except and when it is ratified by the National Assembly, by the parliament. Okay. And therefore, on that premise, if Nigeria does not sign, and ECOWAS has signed, Ghana has signed, Cote d'Ivoire has signed, there are already 4 trade components, trade regimes existing in West Africa now as we speak. Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, EBA for 13 other countries, and then Nigeria on our own. So, what the EU has done is to disintegrate Nigeria, namely the whole of West Africa. And it's a diplomatic issue. And I'm happy that you are looking at it from a diplomatic subject matter.
So, as a trade specialist now,
yes,
what should be the solution?
The solution, and I have said this to the European Union, eat the humble pie and let's get back to the table and renegotiate. Number 2, ask Nigeria what she wants. And we have told you already, put it on the table. Nigeria does not want an agreement that will be harmful to her industrial strategy. If you look at the whole of West Africa, it is only Nigeria that is, gearing up to have an industrial base. And that's why we are all having a campaign today on made in Nigeria goods. We cannot be a consuming nation forever. We also want to export. Whatever is good for the goods is also good for the agenda. We cannot continue under European Union's domination and say we are importing from Europe, we are importing everything. No, we can also export to them.
Okay, now Nigeria technically is in a recession and the government is taking every step to reflate the economy so that we don't get into a stagflation. Given the scenario, we know the latest is that Mr. President was in Germany and he had a forum with the German business community. So, looking elsewhere and looking the other way from the EPA, do we stand to lose anything?
Come on, that's where we should be looking at as a country at this moment. And of course, there are a lot of pressure, we agree, on Mr. President at this moment, on the EPA, from Europe, from all angles of Europe. A lot of pressure is on him to sign the EPA. However, Mr. President is looking at it from a nationalistic and patriotic angle. I cannot subject Nigeria to this trauma forever. Now, if you sign the EPA as it is, what you have concluded doing is to also block off Asian tigers. And remember, 87.3% of our trade relations now are coming from Asian tigers. So what have you done? If you sign the EPA as it is, with the MFN clause, the most favored nation clause, therein, I have no time to explain all of this. There is also the tendency of blocking out the emerging markets of the BRICS. If you sign the EPA as it is today, what you have also done is to tell America, you that have given us AGOA, to hell with you. And America gave AGOA on a platter, free. Understanding the SD&T, what we call special and differential treatment provisions of the WTO. Okay. And saying that these people are developing, let us help them. Okay. So that there is no reciprocity in that angle.
There are two divergent views out there. Some Nigerians are not knowledgeable about what you're saying in terms of they're not aware of this. And they are feeling that, why would Nigeria not sign? Why should Nigeria not sign? Nigeria should sign. So what will you be telling them?
What I will be telling them is that we cannot sign away our future. We cannot close our eyes and put our hands together in shackles. What the EPA as it is today is pretending, and quote me, is going into shackles, new liberalization, going into a second colonization.
Beautiful. As the president of Nigeria's National Traders Association, what hope for the future, given what Nigeria is doing? Nigeria is preaching diversification, and the position of Nigeria through Mr. President is that, look, we will do this, but soften A, B, C, D, E, and let it align with WTO WTO's agreement. So what will you be telling your trader? Because there are some persons who might infiltrate your ranks.
Of course we know, even now, as we speak, they are infiltrating. But again, because of the channel of communications, the communication strategy that we have, it also gets to us. All the pressures, subtle pressures, and all the attractions, the bananas and they're throwing. But my message is very clear. We don't have any other country. I do not have any other nation except Nigeria. And I therefore have told myself, told my God, told my own country. When I look at the green, white, and green, and I read Nigeria's pledge, my confession is Nigeria first.
Okay. So what message do you have for ECOWAS?
And the message for ECOWAS is, if you want to remain your name as it was founded in 1975, May 28, what you must do, answer that name, Economic Community of West African States. Therefore, keep your economy intact.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Barrister Ken Okowa. Barrister Ken Okowa is the national president of Nigeria's Association of Traders, and also not just a lawyer and a trade lawyer. We looked at EPA. Would it in any way threaten Nigeria's trade between EU? And the answer is no. The concern basically which the Nigerian government is saying is soften the ground, let it align with World Trade Organization's rules, and we'll sign EPA. Other than that, let us keep negotiating. That's about it on Diplomatic Ties today. Thanks for watching. I believe you had a wonderful time with us. On behalf of all of us here, bye-bye.